Old Navy was once the most successful brand in the Gap empire, bigger than Gap itself. It hit $1 billion faster than any retailer in history, became a cultural icon in the 1990s, and dominated American casual fashion. But over time, it faded. Quietly. While it remained financially strong, it lost its cultural power, replaced by fast fashion giants like Zara, H&M, and Shein. Failed experiments, leadership chaos, and a canceled spin-off plan didn't help. Now, with Zac Posen's appointment and a return to 90s aesthetics, Old Navy is slowly trying to reinvent itself again. But the question is, can a forgotten brand recapture its old magic, or is it too late? Old Navy was never supposed to become the crown jewel of American retail. It was created to solve a problem, and accidentally rewrote the rules of budget fashion. Back in 1994, Gap Inc. was thriving, but nervous. A new competitor was brewing. Dayton Hudson, the company behind Target and Mervyn's, was preparing to launch a discount version of Gap. So Gap CEO Mickey Drexler made a bold move. He decided to beat them to it. He launched a test concept called Gap Warehouse, selling overstock at lower prices. It worked. Too well. And Drexler realized it needed to be something bigger. Something with its own name, identity, and strategy. That name? Old Navy. A Parisian cafe spotted on a walk down Boulevard Saint-Germain. The branding had nothing to do with fashion, and maybe that's why it worked. It felt approachable, lighthearted, and just odd enough to stick. In March 1994, the first official Old Navy stores opened in California. Within a year, they had nearly 60 stores and $120 million in sales. By 1995, they doubled their footprint and opened a flagship in Manhattan. And by 1997, Old Navy had become the first retailer in history to reach $1 billion in sales in under 4 years. But it wasn't just the speed that shocked the industry. It was how the brand looked and felt. Stores were intentionally different, big, bright, and modeled after supermarkets with cement floors, shopping carts, and colorful stacks of clothes. It was retail theater for the middle class, a value brand that didn't feel depressing. And that was the genius. Old Navy made fashion fun and affordable at a time when discount stores still felt like an afterthought. Gap had Banana Republic for aspirational shoppers, and Gap itself for the everyday customer. Old Navy? It was the volume play, the family-friendly, fast-moving engine at the bottom of the pyramid, and it was growing faster than anyone predicted. But what started as a smart countermove to a potential threat quickly became the most powerful part of Gap Inc. By the late 1990s, Old Navy wasn't just successful. It was everywhere. It had become more than a place to buy clothes. It was a pop culture force. Part of that came from the way it looked. Old Navy stores didn't try to mimic luxury or chase high fashion. They leaned into their identity. Wide aisles, warehouse lighting, bold signage. Shopping there was easy. It felt familiar. And most importantly, it felt fun. But the real magic was in the branding. Old Navy's commercials were strange, loud, and unforgettable, and that was the point. They brought in celebrities like RuPaul, Morgan Fairchild, and the Backstreet Boys. They built entire campaigns around poodles, polka dots, and mock runway shows. It was campy, chaotic, and completely different from what other retailers were doing. These weren't just ads. They were mini cultural moments, the kind people actually talked about. And they worked. The brand became instantly recognizable, not just for what it sold, but how it acted. Old Navy didn't try to be cool. It tried to be in on the joke, and somehow that made it even cooler. It also tapped into something deeper, a new kind of American identity. It wasn't just selling clothes. It was selling togetherness. Stores were built for families. The messaging was friendly. And every summer, their $5 flag tees became an unexpected tradition, a unifying symbol worn at barbecues and 4th of July parades across the country. And then there were the flip-flops. Old Navy's annual $1 flip-flop sale became a retail phenomenon, second only to Black Friday in revenue. Customers lined up in droves, stocking up on a product so cheap and simple it almost became a joke. But it worked. Because Old Navy wasn't trying to be aspirational, it was trying to be accessible. This era cemented Old Navy as more than a discount brand. It was a cultural anchor, a place people grew up with, a place that felt like home. But in fashion, being familiar is both a strength and a risk. Because eventually, what felt fresh and quirky started to feel stale. By the 2010s, Old Navy had settled into its role as a household staple, but the market around it had completely changed. The rise of fast fashion players like H&M and Zara shifted the baseline for what affordable and on-trend meant. Then came Shein, accelerating that shift even further. Old Navy's once distinct position, fun, accessible, and reliable, began to blur. Shoppers who had grown up with the brand now had newer, faster, more style-forward options. Old Navy wasn't losing customers because it had done something wrong. It was losing them because it hadn't changed fast enough. At the same time, internal issues started piling up. In 2021, Old Navy launched a high-profile size inclusivity push, aiming to offer every style in every size, in stores and online. The campaign was well-intentioned and earned positive press at first, but execution faltered almost immediately. Middle sizes sold out quickly, while extreme sizes overstocked. Inventory spiraled, discounting increased, sales dropped. Then came the leadership shakeups. In 2022, CEO Nancy Green stepped down after less than 2 years. A planned spinoff of Old Navy into its own company, once considered Gap Inc.'s most promising move, had already been canceled due to rising costs and poor performance. Suddenly, the brand that had once outperformed its parent was being outpaced by almost everyone. Old Navy's design had also grown stale. While Zara and Shein flooded TikTok with viral pieces, Old Navy stuck to basics. The bold identity it built in the 90s had faded into something generic. A default option rather than a destination. What made it worse? The stores themselves. Compared to sleek competitors, Old Navy's locations felt outdated. The same wide aisles and warehouse vibe that once felt approachable now felt out of step. For a brand built on fun, there was very little energy left in the experience. It wasn't a collapse, it was a slow fade. And in retail, that's often harder to recover from. But in 2024, something changed. Old Navy did something unexpected. After years of playing it safe, Gap Inc. brought in Zac Posen, the designer best known for dramatic gowns, red carpet fashion, and a completely different customer base, as Old Navy's new chief creative officer. The choice was bold, and it signaled that the brand wasn't just trying to fix itself. It was trying to transform. From the start, Posen made it clear he wasn't here to imitate Shein or chase Gen Z virality. He was here to make Old Navy feel like Old Navy again, but better. You have to celebrate your heritage while creating new history, he said in one interview. And that's exactly what the strategy became. Reintroduce what once worked, but with more intention, more quality, and better design. The first major test? The '94 reissue. Launched to celebrate the brand's 30th anniversary, this limited edition collection brought back some of Old Navy's most iconic pieces from the 1990s. Baby tees, baggy jeans, fleece pullovers, but upgraded with premium fabrics and better fits. The team reportedly sourced vintage Old Navy pieces from Depop and eBay, then reverse-engineered them to recreate the feel of the originals. Posen was shocked by how well-made the old garments were. In interviews, he compared them to the Row and Loro Piana, brands known for luxury craftsmanship. That realization became part of the new formula: make affordable clothes that feel like they should cost more. And it worked. The anniversary drop was a success. Sales rose, reviews were strong, And for the first time in years, Old Navy had real cultural momentum again. But this wasn't just a one-off nostalgia play. Since Posen's arrival, the brand has been refining more than just product. The logo placement changed. No longer loud and center, but embossed quietly at the neck. Colors were softened, silhouettes sharpened. Even the messaging shifted away from discounts and toward style. Behind the scenes, Old Navy also began investing in better materials, more versatile fits, and collections that could appeal to shoppers beyond one-off trends. It's a bet on staying power, not just price. And for a brand that had spent the last decade fading into the background, that bet might be exactly what it needed. Old Navy isn't just up against its past anymore. It's up against a completely different industry. The retail landscape that once made Old Navy a billion-dollar star has been rewritten by faster, cheaper, and more chaotic competitors. Shein, Temu, and even Amazon now dominate the conversation around affordability. TikTok drives trends at breakneck speed. And for younger consumers, value doesn't just mean price. It means versatility, ethics, and style. So where does Old Navy fit? Under Zac Posen and Gap Inc. CEO Richard Dixon, the brand is carving out a different kind of lane, one built on creative credibility and functional relevance. Instead of trying to be the cheapest or the trendiest, Old Navy is positioning itself as the most wearable, the most dependable, the most inclusive, but without sacrificing design. That's not just theory, it's already showing up in product. Recent collections have leaned into quiet staples, high-waisted denim, elevated basics, nostalgic outerwear. But the difference is in the execution. Better fabric weights, subtle tailoring, color palettes that feel less cartoonish, more refined. And most importantly, pieces that aren't meant to fall apart after one season. It's a shift that might not grab headlines the way $1 flip-flops once did. But it's quietly rebuilding trust. Internally, the brand has also refocused on smarter inventory management, learning from the sizing fiasco of 2021 by emphasizing real-time store feedback, curated size distribution, and better planning. And instead of leaning into deep discounts, Old Navy is experimenting with more intentional promotions, closer to how Target or Uniqlo positions value. This evolution matters because it's not just about survival, it's about relevance. Old Navy knows it can't win a race to the bottom. What it can do is offer something its fast fashion rivals don't: familiarity, quality, and a sense of play that doesn't feel disposable. It's not trying to reinvent fashion. It's trying to meet people where they actually are, busy, price-conscious, and style-aware. And if it can do that consistently, it might just find its way back into America's closets, for the right reasons this time. Old Navy was never supposed to be a fashion icon. It was supposed to be a retail response, a defense move against competitors. But somehow it became something more: a cultural touchpoint, a family staple, a billion-dollar disruptor. And now, 3 decades later, that legacy is on the line. The brand still makes billions. It still has national name recognition. But in the world of fast fashion, past success means nothing if you can't keep up or stand out. The question isn't whether Old Navy can survive. It's whether it can matter again. That's the real challenge Zac Posen and the new leadership are trying to solve. Not just how to bring people back, but how to make them care. And the early signs, from elevated collections to tighter inventory control, suggest they're paying attention. But nostalgia alone won't carry the brand forward, and price alone won't save it. The modern consumer has options: faster, cheaper, trendier options, and Old Navy has to prove why it deserves a spot in their cart. It means rebuilding identity from the inside out, leaning into creative vision, honoring the past without getting stuck in it. Because if Old Navy's comeback works, it won't just be about fashion. It'll be a rare example of a mass market brand choosing substance over speed and actually pulling it off. So what do you think? Can a brand built on simplicity, scaled for the masses, and stretched across decades still find its place in a world that's moving faster than ever? Or will Old Navy be remembered as a brand that tried to catch up? Just one trend too late. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.